Hi everybody and welcome to episode 2 of This Week in Street, where I break down the top street photography and related stories from around the net, plus anything else I find interesting along the way. This week's stories include Fuji firmware updates, stuff Leica owners say, and a lot more. There's a ton to cover, so let's get right into it, shall we? First up, Fuji firmware updates. Fuji announced firmware updates for just about all its top-line cameras, including the X Pro 2, the X-T2, the brand new XH1, the X100F. This is a typical firmware update with bug fixes and enhancements, but the X Pro 2 and X-T2 now get the latest phase detect autofocus algorithms, presumably trickled down from the XH1. The X-T2 gets a couple of extra video features. You can record F-Log internally, and they've added in the 120 frames per second HD slow motion recording, which is excellent. A lot of people were wondering if the X-T2 was going to inherit the Eterna picture profile, which is a lovely way to shoot video. As it turns out, no, they're keeping that with the XH1, and that kind of makes sense. The XH1 is their hybrid video shooter. It makes sense to keep that sort of video-centric profile over there for now, but who knows? Fuji might change their mind. You might end up in the X100F before you know it. Fuji's probably got the best reputation in the industry for maintaining existing cameras with firmware updates that add new features, and this one should come as no surprise. Fuji's got your back. If you're a Fuji user, fire up your browser and download the update. Link is in the description. What's next? Leica prices are going up. Leica Store Miami has confirmed that Leica prices are going up starting May 1st. The most expensive camera brand is getting even more expensiver. Leica M bodies are going up on average $400 to $500. Leica M lenses are going up $200 to $300. Leica does some weird thing with their prices, presumably for the free press. They'll raise their prices and then a few weeks later offer a rebate to bring them back down to the prices that it used to be. I mean, a couple years ago, they had a temporary rebate that kept getting extended for an entire year. I don't know why they didn't just lower their price permanently, but I guess this is just one way that Leica does their thing. So look, there's no guarantee these prices are going to stick, but you never know. So if you're in the market for a new precious Leica baby, you better get over there before May 1st and get what you're getting before it gets more expensiver. And speaking of Leica, Steve Huff from SteveHuffPhoto.com just got another Leica M10. Look, Steve Huff runs one of the most recognizable and well-respected photo sites on the net. He's been doing reviews for years. He's a well-known Leica and Sony lover. This should come as no surprise. Why is this news? Well, Steve released a video discussing the reasons why he bought another M10. According to Steve, Leica is a different experience that brings out the passion within some people. Leica speaks to your heart and soul. Once you connect with it, it's a camera you can really bond with. Menus are simple. Using it is simple. It's a different option for people that are really passionate about the craft of photography. That's just stuff Leica users say. Listen, I'm not cutting down Steve in his decision to buy another M10. Honestly, if I had 10 grand kicking around, I'd probably buy an M10 and another Cron, or maybe an iMac Pro, or maybe I'd go to Australia for a month. Anyways, the whole thing got me thinking about the Leica reality distortion field. I owned an M240, I shot with a 35 Cron, used the camera for a couple years, took some of my best shots with it. I get it, it's a well-made piece of kit, it's a joy to use, but none of the reasons that Steve listed for buying an M10 are the exclusive property of Leica. Remember when they released the MD with no LCD on the back and everyone was like, oh, it's great, you can't chimp. Think how thoughtful your photography process would become without chimp. Of course, you could just not chimp, or you could put some tape on the back of your LCD, or you could get a camera with a broken LCD, or you could just not chimp. If chimping is something you're worried about, you don't need a Leica to prevent you from chimping. You could just not chimp. It's really that simple. There's no question that Leica M cameras eschew technology for tradition, and if that's what you're looking for, then Leica is the way to go. But it's not the ultimate tool. The ultimate photographic tool is your own eye. The machine that you use to make a photograph only matters to you. No one cares when they're looking at your images that it was shot on this camera or that camera, except other photographers who might be looking for this camera or that camera, but that's a whole other thing. Don't get me wrong, Leica lenses still have a vibe, they have a quality to them, I get that. I'm testing out an A7 III and I've got an adapter and my friend lent me a 35 Cron, a Canadian one, the king of bokeh, yay. But you know, I get it, I get the appeal, but it's not the ultimate answer in photography. It's just another choice that you can make. It's like I said in my original M240 review, which you can see on StreetShooter.com, having an expensive camera doesn't make you a better photographer. It makes being a photographer better. It's like driving a luxury car. If you have a really expensive car, you don't magically get to a different destination, but the ride becomes the thing. And this can trickle down as inspiration that generates new ideas and inspires you. I get that. But it's not the sole property of Leica. At some point, we have to separate the creative process of photography from the mechanical process of making an image. And it seems to me with Leica that the two are so entwined as to be indistinguishable. I know Leica guys are going to chime in, that's not true at all, I'm very creative no matter what. Okay, the point that I'm making is it's not the sole property of Leica, and I think the brand gets elevated to the point where people start believing the hype, they believe the things they're saying about the camera. They're not that special, they're just really well made cameras. So Look, I don't want to start a flame war. I think I already have. Tell me your ideas in the comments. Are you pro Leica, anti Leica? Tell me what your thoughts are. Am I way out to lunch on this one? Do you think the M10 is the ultimate photographic tool? Post your comments. Let me hear what you have to say. I'm all ears on this one. Leica flame war on. Yeah. All right, what else we got? All right, the guys from Negative Feedback scored a private tour of the Kodak plant in Rochester, New York, and the video is all kinds of awesome. The tour starts off with an overview of the grounds that includes the steam power plant. The whole place was run on steam. Buildings from 1894 and Building 28, whose sole purpose was for the recreation of Kodak employees. The thing has a 2,000 seat, 70 millimeter theater in it. What? Look, it's easy to lose sight of how big Kodak was. They were the leading producer of photographic film for over 125 years, and the plant today can still produce 35,000 rolls of film a day. It's not doing that, but it's capable of doing that. The company declared bankruptcy in 2012 and now only produces a handful of film stocks. But the legacy of Kodak lives on in every brick of every building on those grounds. And it's great to see the reverence and respect the tour guide has for this mega company that's now in its twilight years. So they head to the plant and see the actual film production line. There's so much to talk about with this video, from how much the semi-deserted plant reminds me of a James Bond villain's lair, to a gigantic glittering bin of sprocket cutouts from 35mm film, to the hypnotic packaging machines. It's just so good. But don't take my word for it. Watch the video for yourself. It's going to be the best 12 minutes you spent today. Links in the description. Oh, one more thing. You can't really think about Rochester and Kodak without thinking about Alex and Rebecca Webb's book, Memory City. The book turns a critical eye towards the effect of Kodak's demise on Rochester as a city, and it's filled with beautiful images and beautiful sentiments. It's definitely worth checking out. Alex actually used some of his last rolls of Kodachrome to make the black and white shots in this book. You can still process Kodachrome as black and white. You can no longer process it as color. So there's this entwined legacy of loss and unfulfilled potential. It's a beautiful book and it's definitely worth checking out. If you're interested in the Kodak story at all, or if you're just a fan of Alex Webb and his wife Rebecca Norris Webb, hey, check it out, man. There's some great stuff there. Link to that also in the description. One last thing, the Sony A7 III is in the house. Yes, look, Sony A7 III. This is one of the most hyped cameras in recent history, and I got one. Part curiosity, part gear fetish, part I just wanted one, but I'm gonna do a full street photography review on it. Let you know how it holds up to the challenges of shooting street photography. Is it worth the money, or is it just a load of crap? Well, we're gonna find out. You know, this is my first Sony Alpha camera. I've held off. There's always been something about them that stood in my way. They were a little too slow. They were a little too kludgy. The buttons were sort of in the wrong spot. They didn't make sense. And Fuji was always there for me, so I was just like, ugh, I don't need to deal with that. With this camera though, it really feels like they've hit the right combination of stuff. When you put it in your hand, it just kind of, in my hand anyway, it just feels right. A couple first impressions of this camera. It's solid. It's a solid piece of kit. This doesn't feel plasticky or junky in any way. It's a little heavier than I thought. I've never had an Alpha camera before, so I had no idea what to expect, but it's not too heavy, but it's got some heft to it, maybe exactly the right amount of heft. The AF is ridiculous. It's so good. We know that I'm not an AF shooter when it comes to street photography. I'm the guy who does zone focusing. This might actually change my mind. We'll see how that goes though. I've also got a Leica lens adapter and I borrowed a Summicron 35 from a friend. So I'm gonna do a bunch of tests in different ways that people can use this camera and report back to you when I have an answer. This might take me a few weeks to do. It could even take me a month. I am not someone who just lists the features and calls it a review. I'm actually gonna shoot with this camera for an extended period of time and give you honest feedback as to how I feel this works as a tool for street photographers. And if we're lucky, it's gonna do all right. I can't stop looking through this viewfinder. It's fine. The viewfinder's actually... The funny thing is this has, if you've ever seen an A7R III, it's got this wondrous viewfinder. It's like a 3 million pixel, it's like looking through a window. You're not even aware. This is a 2.3 million pixel viewfinder. So this is what the top of the line viewfinder, this is a T-Star, it's got the whole thing. This is the top of the line viewfinder from the previous generation. And you know, I would like if this had the other one, but it doesn't, so it's fine. That's not gonna stand in the way of me making images with this camera. So watch for that review on StreetShooter.com. I'll let you know when it's available. Okay, that's it for episode 2 of This Week in Street. Every week I'll run down the top street photography and related stories from across the net, plus anything else I find interesting along the way. If you like this episode, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. But for now, I'm Carl from Street Shooter, and that's enough of me. Now get out there and take some pictures already. Hold on, let me Let me get some sweat off my brow here. Sweat off my brow. I got sweat on my brow. Got to soak it up with some makeup.